And it is that reality which is beyond any division. And yet it is that which moves out into multifarious realities of the world. It is only when you can put these two together in a synthetic manner that thought becomes steady, not only silent but steady. And life begins to have a dance which is systematic and full. Now, up till now we have seen that if you start with the statement that matter is real and spirit is real, both are real, but if you are not able to reconcile together in a systematic manner, then the choice becomes imperative. Either you become a realist, materialist, or you become idealist or a spiritualist. And in neither of these two, ultimately you will find a reconciliation and ultimate satisfaction. Now in the next paragraph, we have a psychological account of the history of human thought. What Aurobindo says is that there was, at the very beginning of history of thought, a synthesis. Aurobindo does not here refer to the Veda and the Upanishad by name, but psychologically he refers to them. That to begin with, there was a harmony of spirit and matter both in the Veda and the Upanishad. But that harmony of the Veda and Upanishad was disturbed. When that disturbance takes place, then what is the method by which we can return to that synthesis which we have lost? The entire history of thought, entire history of life in a sense, you might say, is a history of a disturbance. There was a harmony in the thought and life of the Veda and the Upanishads. That harmony got lost. There was something that happened. It was lost. When it is lost, psychologically, how do you recover it? The method is a gradual return. And in the movement of a gradual return, you are obliged to make a test. Is matter the sole reality? Is life the sole reality? Is mind the sole reality? Is spirit the sole reality? This kind of a search becomes inevitable. If you start with a state of disturbance, you go to every station, important station, and ask whether that is the terminal point. You have lost the terminal point, which was the starting point, was the reconciliation of spirit and matter. That is disturbed. Then you are obliged to ask each one of the elements as if it is terminal point and ask, is matter terminal? Is life terminal? Is mind terminal? Is spirit terminable? It is again when you see all of them and you linger on each station for quite some time, and that is the history of thought. History of thought, therefore, has taken different positions. At one time it has said matter is the only reality. Sometime it has said life is the only reality. Sometime it has said mind is the only reality. Sometime it has said spirit is the only ultimate reality. It is when all these four elements have been first put on the throne and each one has been found to be inadequate that you can then come back to the return of reconciling all of them together. This is the entire account of the history of thought, Eastern and Western. We all have tried out knocking the door and tried to see the world in one form or the other. In this movement, the two movements which have lingered most are the position of materialist, which regards matter as the only principle by which everything can be explained, or spirit, according to which spirit is the only reality by which everything can be explained. These two positions have remained longer, but even these positions have given way. Today we stand at a stage where both spirit and matter even though they have lingered for a long time, they both have come to a conclusion that they are inadequate. If we emphasize spirit and deny matter, this is the conclusion. If we emphasize matter and deny spirit, then this is the conclusion. And Aurobindo said, India has made a great experiment in affirming the spirit and denying matter. Europe has made a great experiment in affirming matter and denying the spirit, and both have come to the conclusion that India has suffered, Europe also has suffered. And both of them are now looking forward to a point as to how they can learn from each other and how they can reconcile the two positions together. Now this next paragraph is psychological analysis and quite a difficult paragraph, but I'll go through it because we are taking a study of the life divine, so we must know what this book contains. So I'm not passing over, saying it is very difficult, we shall not go through it, but let us read it. But when that rhythm has been disturbed, it is necessary and helpful that man should test separately in their extreme assertion each of the two great opposites. It is the mind's natural way of returning more perfectly to the affirmation it has lost. On the road, it may attempt to rest in the intervening degrees, reducing all things into the terms of an original life energy, or of sensation, or of ideas. But these exclusive solutions have always an air of unreality. They may satisfy for a time the logical reason which deals only with pure ideas, but they cannot satisfy the mind's sense of actuality. For the mind knows that there is something behind itself which is not the idea. It knows, on the other hand, that there is something within itself which is more than the vital breath. Either spirit or matter can give it, for a time, some sense of ultimate reality. Not so any of the principles that intervene. It must therefore go to the two extremes before it can return truthfully upon the whole. For by its very nature, served by a sense that can perceive with distinctness only the parts of existence, and by a speech that also can achieve distinctiveness only when it carefully divides and limits, the intellect is driven, having before it this multiplicity of elemental principles, to seek unity by reducing all ruthlessly to the terms of one. It attempts practically, in order to assert this one, to get rid of the others. To perceive the real source of their identity without this exclusive process, it must either have overleaped itself or must have completed the circuit only to find that all equally reduce themselves to that which escapes definition or description and is yet not only real but attainable. By whatever road we may travel, that is always the end at which we arrive, and we can only escape it by refusing to complete the journey. Now this whole paragraph becomes very vivid only if you have read both history of Western philosophy and Indian philosophy, or if you have traversed psychologically a trauma. You have certain psychological cases. You bring up a child, for example, under the influence of Veda and Upanishads, in which the synthesis is prescribed to the child. And the child grows up in the joy of spirit and matter. And there's a great harmony in life, even in the life pattern that the child sees all around. There is the meditation, there is a pursuit of the spirit, and there is cultivation of art and beauty, and cultivation of multifarious activities of life, each one systematically organized and wonderfully arranged. And matter also being given great respect, and everything is in its right place, and even the hurting of a vessel creates a kind of a scratch in the mind of the child. If this kind of care is taken, and if you educate the child and grows up to the age of 10, 11, 12, the mind is so balanced, so happy. Everywhere there is joy in life. And then suddenly the child is taken out of this beautiful environment and thrown into a land which is foreign. He won't understand what is all this life. There is a nightclub, and there is the shopping, and there is cinema, and there is a kind of a neglect of everything in the world, and a pursuit only of pleasure all around. There's a great disturbance which takes place to this psychological condition. He does not yet know that he was in a great sense of harmony in his childhood. And suddenly now he is in a world which is quite different. What happens to that child? How will he recover that synthesis which has been lost? He will have to go through a process. He will examine, is this what he says? Is this really the final ultimate? And he will try to see that yes, that is the ultimate, and will examine everything in that life to be the ultimate meaning, until he is told, no. Matter is not the only thing, pleasure is not the only thing. There are noble ends, some idealism. And then he says, then if idealism, to what extent idealism? Full idealism, partial idealism? He goes through a kind of a terrain of various philosophies of idealism, because even in idealism there are various alternatives: subjective idealism, objective idealism, absolute idealism, and various kinds of idealisms. And then somebody says, no, neither matter is real, nor ideal is real. Life burst, élan vital of Bergson, that is the real thing. Matter is also useless, mind is also useless. It is a life bursting which is the real. And he examines everything in terms of that. And he finds even that is not satisfying. Then he says, oh, you go into meditation, transcendental meditation. Only that is real. All this is wrong. All this is false. And the child withdraws. Within 7-8 years, he grows up. Something what happens to Siddhartha in this novel Siddhartha. When he says, I can think, I can meditate. And then he enters into the life of thinking and meditation and sees he wants to go to Darjeeling and wants to go to Tiger Hills and wants to go to the Himalayas and seek a complete solution, solitude. He examines that also, and then he says, but if all this is real, what about all that he has left behind? What about those experiences of life force, of cinema and pleasure and all that? How to reconcile this? It is when